This is an important forum for the National Trust of Guyana, and one that I am proud to be spearheading, particularly having initiated and pursued to make a reality. It comes at the most significant time in our country's development when we observe 50 years as an independent nation. On May 26, 2016, we all stood proudly to usher in our 50th independence under the theme, Reflect, Celebrate, Inspire. Falling from this historic moment, we thought it fitting to generate a general discussion on heritage with the hope that we can recommit our efforts toward ensuring it is safeguarded for the benefit of our future generations as we move toward the next 50 years and beyond. The National Trust of Guyana, of course, was established in 1972, following the passage of the National Trust Act. And this was revised to some extent in 2012. This act, and I quote, makes provision for the preservation of monuments, sites, places, and objects of historic interest or national importance, end of quote. The vision of the trust, that is that our heritage must be valued and preserved, our history recorded, and our people inspired and empowered. Pretty strong words. Over the 44 years of our existence, we have managed to do this, particularly documenting our legacy, among others. Heritage is our foundation, both as individuals and as a nation. It is the source of our identity and the seal that sets us apart as a nation. Our heritage is comprised of the historical achievements and cultural goods that our ancestors treasured and preserved over time, and to which we have added our contribution. Learning about our heritage helps us to become more keenly aware of our own roots and appreciate the wealth of other cultures and peoples. Given the foregoing, the National Trust is pleased to have partnered with the US-based World Monuments Fund organization for this conference. In fact, the background to the World Monuments Fund involvement is as a result of the Trust's initiative to explore assistance for the preservation of our dear City Hall. With my knowledge about the organization, we began in 2013 to inquire about the watch list, which calls international attention to at-risk cultural heritage sites around the globe. They responded, we submitted an application, and were successful in getting the 1889 City Hall listed on the World Monuments Fund's watch list for 2014. It's the first such listing for Guyana again. They supported, after listing that site, a Watch Day event which we held later in 2014 to further promote this initiative. And I would say the rest is, of course, history, what living history, as they are here today with us to share their knowledge and expertise in an effort to aid our work and the overall management of the cultural heritage resources of Guyana, and in particularly to help us restore our City Hall. This conference was decided by the National Trust as a boost to the heritage sector, particularly the tangible built sector, as experts would gather to share knowledge and expertise that would aid the preservation, promotion, and protection of Guyana's heritage resources. Hence, the main focus, though not limited to, is on improving the conservation of our tangible built heritage. This sector, as we know, faces many challenges, including but not limited to unplanned rapid urbanization, limited or no documentation in some cases of heritage resources, demands to modernize historic structures, the notion of in with the new and out with the old mentality, and heritage being a hindrance to progress, among others. Hence, the 7 thematic areas of management and policy, history and theory, documentation and conservation, heritage sustainability, heritage and community, world cultural and natural heritage, and of course, economics of preservation. We'll see both local and international speakers sharing their respective experiences and perspectives on the notion of heritage preservation. However, as we would have been discussing earlier with the team, preservation is for everyone, but it's not cheap, or is it easy in some cases, but it is possible and worthwhile, as our existence is more than economic growth in some cases. It is necessary to safeguard certain historic sites, features, and icons regardless of the cost, as ultimately the cost of their loss would be much more than the financial investments. Also, too, the task of heritage preservation is a huge one, and one must therefore involve everyone, as we are all stakeholders in the process. This requires cohesive long-term planning, dedicated efforts, and most importantly, unwavering support and cooperation from stakeholders. Today's actions will result in tomorrow's heritage. Hence, we must always be cognizant of the lasting effects of our daily decisions. I therefore reiterate His Excellency President David Granger's charge to regional and municipal authorities to administer their own affairs, and in so doing, I urge serious attention be paid by these authorities to the various heritage sites and monuments located within their respective jurisdiction. The term decentralization comes to mind, allowing communities to be involved in safeguarding what is theirs. The Australian authority puts it best, and I quote, "Built heritage within urban and regional neighborhoods is a key to the understanding of our shared history. It helps to define a sense of place and identity for our community. It can contribute to feelings of connectedness and community pride and confidence," end of quote. I know we can all relate to this. What would Georgetown be without Starbrook Market, without City Hall, without St. George's Cathedral, and many of our iconic structures? In fact, I wonder what's the first impression of our visitors who got a brief tour of our city yesterday on their arrival into the city. Had we not had these tangible heritage, what then would we identify with or showcase as we own? We know what we have inherited from our ancestors, who would have performed their duty to ensure they left a firm foundation for us. But what are we doing to ensure we leave a similar or even better legacy for our future generations? Heritage is certainly a part of our daily lives and informs every facet of our existence. We are who we are as a result of our inherited culture. More importantly, our built heritage reflects our skills, our growth and development, and remain tangible evidence of our collective past. Are we not going to ensure we safeguard these treasures? Or are we going to allow ourselves to continue being oblivious, undignified in some cases, and bring dishonor to our previous generation by neglecting, deliberately disregarding, and losing these cultural assets? I am sure by now we are aware that we do not choose our heritage or our past, but we certainly can use it as a guide to chart our future. Our sociocultural heritage, for example, is truly cosmopolitan, given the combination of so many cultures, practices, rituals, and traditions. Our festivals, celebrations, dances, music, food, recreational activities all reflect the multifaceted nature of this Guyana's heritage. Today, most Guyanese, in fact, share in almost all religious, national, and cultural festivals and observances, to some extent embracing our heritage and trying to find that Guyanese identity, which of course we all should be proud of. The Trust over the years worked assiduously to promote many of our historic structures and to provide to the public an array of heritage materials so that everyone can understand, value, and be encouraged to embrace this heritage, be it good, bad, or indifferent. We have also started working with the young minds, exposing tomorrow's generation to the heritage sector. This is done through our Children's Heritage Awareness Program, which was initiated, in fact, in 2011, a program we are very proud of, as I'm certain the young group enjoys learning about their heritage in so many ways, particularly when we take them to experience historic monuments and sites. And two of those students you had reciting the pledge and introducing the chair were past students from that program. In fact, the National Trust's efforts to preserve our built legacy has resulted in us winning an International Green Apple Award for the built environment and architectural heritage in 2016 from the Green Organization in the UK. Based on our submission of the Dutch Heritage Museum, the former Court of Policy Hall located on Fort Island, Essequibo River, Region 3. The function of this structure has been changed, of course, to that of a museum, thus aiding its long-term survival. The built heritage of many countries, including Guyana, is often a factor in tourists' decision to visit. Guyana has a unique blend of wooden architectural heritage which must be protected by maintaining their heritage values, even if we employ adaptive reuse strategies, as we have done in the case of Dutch Heritage Museum. We must understand why we value, who we're valuing it for, and what it really means to us. This is the second international award in recognition for the work of the Trust, of course, over the years. In fact, we won the Caribbean Heritage Protection Award in 2013 from the Caribbean Tourism Organization in recognition of extensive efforts to protect Guyana's unique cultural heritage, a major part of its sustainable product. The agency also recognized the efforts of local stakeholders in sustaining aspects of our heritage during its 40th anniversary awards and dinner, which was held in 2012, and we had the honor of actually presenting to Mrs. Hughes that award. I'm very proud of that. Today's conference is another success also for the Trust, as we have fostered linkages with the World Monuments Fund, a link we hope will remain for years to come as we continue our efforts in safeguarding and promoting this heritage. Some of our visiting speakers are experienced in wood science, structural engineering, architecture, historic preservation, and management, heritage economics, among others. Our local experts are also experienced in similar fields, and together I'm confident we will have a successful 3-day forum with realistic outcomes that would aid in moving the heritage sector forward. Finally, I wish to thank everyone for supporting our work by taking the time to be with us today. I urge that you participate in the discussions throughout the course of the forum. Your feedback is important to the dialogue. I thank all those who have accepted my invitation in one way or another to contribute to this conference. It is indeed a motivation for my young team and I, very small team. Thanks to my staff and those of the World Monuments Fund for working with me to bring this conference to fruition. I request the media to make a special effort in covering this International Heritage Conference. As I close, I ask that we take stock of where we came from, where we are, and where we are going. I urge that we make a conscious effort to learn more about our heritage and pledge to leave a legacy with which our future generations will be proud of.
About 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, on May 26, Guyana celebrated its 50th anniversary, its jubilee. It's a very important date because of the anniversary of its independence. And I understand the event brought back many, or scores probably, of Guyanese living abroad. Many from my own neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm sure a good time was had by all. But I also believe that many of the returning diaspora came back with the hope or the intention of investing back in their country, in the future of their country. And as a representative of the World Monuments Fund, an international advocacy and preservation organization, my message today is going to be very simple. Invest in your future by investing in your past. During the next 3 days, as Nirvana indicated, a group of Guyanese and international experts will discuss all kinds of subjects, including heritage management, policy, history, preservation theory, documentation, conservation, sustainability, community participation, cultural and natural heritage, and of course the economics of preservation. The National Trust of Guyana, our local partner in this initiative, and the World Monuments Fund hope their presentations will be useful to those professionals and authorities who will be shaping the future of Guyana by providing recommendations and presenting applicable examples on how to preserve the cultural and natural heritage of this young country and how to turn it into an engine for economic development and a resource for improving the quality of life of its people. We would like to welcome all of you to this exciting conference and encourage you to establish lasting professional relationships across professional disciplines and international borders so we can all be part of a global network working together in the preservation of Guyana's heritage for the enjoyment of future generations of Guyanese and the world.
All protocols observed, and on behalf of President Obama, the U.S. government, and the U.S. Embassy, I wish you all a very good morning. I'd like to thank the National Trust of Guyana for inviting me to provide very brief remarks today. I'm honored to be here among such a distinguished group of people representing a cross-section of government, academia, the private sector, the diplomatic community, and non-governmental organizations. I would also like to recognize and thank the World Monument Fund for sponsoring this event, as it is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to gather together to discuss the importance of preserving the cultural heritage of Guyana in particular and other countries in the world in general. As a U.S. organization, I am proud of the work you do to save the world's most treasured places. Your work in Britain, France, Italy, Peru, Spain, Guatemala, and other countries is nothing short of spectacular, and you should be commended. As some of you may know, President Obama just last week proclaimed the National Caribbean American Heritage Month. He eloquently stated that the dynamism and diversity of Caribbean Americans have contributed to our nation's story in extraordinary ways. We celebrate the contribution of our Caribbean American brothers and sisters, and we reflect on how they have bolstered our country and enriched our traditions. Let us reflect upon the diversity of experiences that unite us as a people. The President further stated that the bonds between the United States and the Caribbean remain strong, both rooted in similar legacies of trial and triumph, oppression and liberation. Our narratives have advanced on a similar path of progress, driven forward by our shared dedication to fostering opportunity and forging a brighter future. The United States is committed to working with the nations of the Caribbean to advance security, liberty, and prosperity. In terms of what we're doing at the U.S. Embassy today, in this area of cultural heritage preservation, I'd like to say we're doing a lot. I'd like to do more. I am hopeful that at least sometime this year, July or August, we submitted 2 different projects for the Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation. One is to repair and preserve the Starbrook Clock Tower and the clock itself. The other is the Georgetown Lighthouse, which has been standing tall since the mid-1800s or early 1800s. I can tell you that I personally went to the top of both buildings, all 138 stairs of the lighthouse, and I didn't have a heart attack. I could still talk when I got up there. And the views are, quite frankly, from both of them are magnificent. I was surprised because I didn't think the clock tower was as tall as it is, but the views up there are wonderful, so I hope they could be... I hope that we'll get funding for at least one of the projects to repair and preserve them for future generations. And it is remotely possible we could get funding for both, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Many of you you all know that it was 50 years of independence for Guyana, but many don't know that this year we, the United States, with Guyana, are celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations. We were one of the first countries to recognize Guyana. And so our theme at our Independence Day party in July is 50 years of diplomatic relations. So I started doing some historical research, looking for photos and stuff to document 50 years of diplomatic relations. And I must tell you, a couple of, I think you mentioned it, Nigel, and others have mentioned it, a lot of photos, a lot of historic documents have been lost to floods and fire in this country. I've called newspapers and other places, well, we had some of those, but in the fire of 1972 or the flood of 2005, so there is a lot of work to be done. And now is the time to do it. Tomorrow will be too late. So I encourage all of you to do your part in your own small ways. And if you don't do it for yourself, then do it for your children or your grandchildren. Thank you very much.
I must first of all congratulate the National Trust of Guyana for initiating and bringing to fruition the Georgetown International Heritage Conference. I believe that the effort that they would have made towards making this forum a reality should be noted. I also wish to thank the World Monument Fund organization for supporting this initiative and collaborating with the National Trust to safeguard our nation's heritage. I understand this is your first step in collaboration, and I look forward to a sustainable partnership. Let me welcome those of you visiting our beautiful country, fondly known as the land of many waters. I know this is your first time, and I believe that it will not be a last time, as we are a people of warmth and uniqueness, and we certainly look forward to seeing you here in Guyana. in the future. This conference comes at a time that is important in our nation's history, as we've just celebrated Guyana's Golden Jubilee of Independence on May 26, 2016, under the theme of reflection, celebration, and inspiration. Indeed, we reflected and celebrated on the journey we took for the last 50 years as a people, as a nation. Now, as we look towards the next 50 years, we must ensure that our contributions to preserve, protect, and promote this country's rich and diverse heritage are beneficial to our future generations. We must ensure that our efforts count, that our actions are positive, and that all we do is lending towards development in a sustainable manner. I believe that built environments are usually the tangible evidence of our growth, development, and ingenious skills. These historic structures today were once vibrant places similar to our contemporary societies, and we must ensure our society is aware of our heritage. The involvement of children, therefore, is very important to the process, as they are the future stewards of our legacy. The National Trust Children's Heritage Awareness Program is an excellent opportunity for the 8 to 11 age group, and this should be strengthened as it exposes our young minds to various aspects of Guyanese heritage and provides a practical hands-on approach and experience on working with heritage. We must educate our young generation if we are serious about cultural heritage reform and improvement. As the famous Marcus Garvey expressed, a people without knowledge of its heritage is like a tree without roots. Hence, ensuring our next generation is taught at an early stage about their heritage is imperative. We all have aspects of our history we're not, proud, or we would not want to emphasize. However, we must embrace our heritage because they are who we are today. The poem Heritage that we heard recited by our children indeed capture the sentiments that we are indeed the custodians of this nation's heritage that was left by our predecessors. But more importantly, it begs a serious question of where and what we want for the next generation. The next few days, there are 7 thematic areas that this conference will discuss. I would hope, and I certainly anticipate, that the discussions will pool our thoughts towards realistic outcomes that can be considered for implementation in improving the heritage sector and the way we manage and protect our heritage resources. It is important for us to care for our heritage sites and monuments, as they are landmarks in our legacy. I am pleased with the supporting heritage display mounted on the ground floor, as this complements the conference, since it showcases aspects of our nation's heritage. Just a mere glimpse of this rich, diverse, and colorful legacy we are so proud of. I urge everyone to take a look at these exhibits that feature our people, forts, monuments, folklore, proverbs, architecture, conservation, among others, and allow yourself to reflect, celebrate, and be inspired. As this is, as Dave Martin says, as this is we own. And he just sang that beautiful song. Before I leave the podium this morning, let me take the opportunity to urge the National Trust to continue promoting and preserving our nation's heritage amongst the many challenges we face as a country. Heritage is a business of all of us, and we must pledge to do more. I say thank you, National Trust, for organizing this conference. I know the small and young team worked extremely hard on this. Equally, I express my appreciation to the World Monument Fund and their visiting team for seeing the value in our heritage and for cooperating with the National Trust to organize this conference. I know the package schedule, but I hope you will get some time to see and experience some of our Guyanese cultural heritage. I wish you a successful conference, and I look forward to the outcomes. Thank you.
I want to begin, as I believe other speakers have properly done, by expressing my congratulations to the National Trust on hosting this conference and the World Monuments Fund in partnering with the Trust on this event. It is, of course, timely and fitting that we started out the entertainment component of this event with Dave Martin performing his truly Guyanese classic, the one song that I can think of that unabashedly celebrates our heritage, is Wiyon. Guyana is Wiyon indeed, and it is unfortunate that while it has been rebuilt, it is not yet ready to host at least part of this conference's proceedings. Another perhaps obvious irony is that despite the National Trust and the World Monuments Fund having connected over the urgency to preserve Georgetown City Hall as a cultural heritage site, the building which many of you are esteemed guests had the experience of touring this morning could not have hosted at least the opening of this event. Even as I applaud the heroic efforts of CEO Nirvana Persaud and her team of the National Trust in both the tremendous effort this conference must have taken to get going, as well as the invaluable work they have done over the years, I have to acknowledge that the state mechanisms for identifying and preserving our built heritage in particular have been far from ideal over the years. The absence of protocol to preserve an inherently fire-prone heritage site and inaction as the most historic building in our capital site deteriorates both reflect the sort of gaps in cultural heritage policy that should not exist in as culturally rich a society as ours. We live in an era when cultural conflict, manifesting itself in the extreme as open warfare, is resulting in the destruction of invaluable built heritage and artifacts, much of it hundreds, sometimes thousands of years old. Whether it is the deliberate efforts of ISIL today in Libya, or the collateral damage caused by military contractors during the invasion of Iraq 10 years ago, cultural heritage is often an undocumented casualty of war. In Guyana, in the absence of armed conflict, in the absence of cataclysmic environmental disasters, we have no excuse not to come up with comprehensive systems of preserving both our tangible and intangible heritage, the true wealth of this country. This conference comes at a time when the government of Guyana is in the midst of creating and tabling a national cultural policy, and I'm happy to see that the program, while focusing primarily on tangible cultural heritage, also necessarily delves somewhat into the intangible. Indeed, there are inevitable areas of intersection, for example, that which will be covered by Major General Joe Singh and representatives of the YY community, indigenous craftsmanship, and the reconstruction of Guyana. One of my commitments as a projected outcome of a completed policy is the creation of a mechanism, or perhaps the expansion of the remit of the National Trust, to focus on preserving our intangible cultural heritage, particular preservation and active use of our indigenous languages. Indeed, over the next 2 years and beyond, I can assure you that culture, from both a policy and program perspective, will increasingly occupy center stage in the government of Guyana's sustainable developmental plans. We will be examining the implications of cultural practices on our interaction with the natural environment in the era of climate change, the role of culture in how we have defined citizenship from the independence movement to now, and how we can redefine citizenship in a world of shifting, almost fluid demographic movement. And finally, how we integrate culture into our education system so that we can instill in our children a sense of value with regard to rich cultural heritage and the openness of mind to celebrate the resulting diversity. This is, of course, in addition to concrete initiatives in the areas of cultural heritage preservation and creative industry development. Last week, our commemoration of our 50th independence anniversary reached the apex of the celebratory aspects of the planned activities. As the year closes, it is initiatives like this one that will be critical in helping us to reflect on our identity as a people and to inspire the concrete steps we still have to take to give life and action to policy. I'm very happy that the plan is to record, and I also hope to publish, the presentations coming out of this conference. As I am probably now in danger of usurping the keynote address from the Honorable Prime Minister, I shall take my leave and look forward to observing at least some of the riveting presentations to follow. Thank you.
Had I known that this opening function would have been so rich in the contributions I have heard, including in addition to the songs, steel pan, poetry, I would not have been up until 1 a.m. this morning trying to fix a few words to say in this opening session. I would have been content to just come here and say, declare this conference open. But I'm mindful that I do not speak here on my own behalf, but that of the government of Guyana, and more particularly, I speak on behalf of His Excellency President David Granger, whom I'm sure would have had many interesting things to say at this historic conference. In the last year, sharing his friendship and association, I know we spend long hours, perhaps Lecturer Roopnaraine would correct me, in getting our minutes right for cabinet, getting all the words correct, because I believe as a historian, if we didn't get it right today, we would be bequeathing as a heritage what we did wrong. And I believe that it is the same passion that had led us to recover the Stabroek Market Square as an historic beauty and artifact, not without problems, not without criticisms. And I know also President Granger has almost been unilateral in trying to get, in the way Dave Martin has just sung, an avenue of the Caribbean, an avenue of the Atlantic, so that we know who we are and where we are. But that also is not without criticisms. In trying to be what we ought to be, proud people of the Caribbean and sons and daughters of the Atlantic. Therefore, if you find me repetitious, it's because I believe that coming out of our 50th year of independence, all of us embrace with one heart our heritage as that of our independence. Many of us didn't struggle for it. We didn't sacrifice for it. But as Dave Martins just reminded us, it is we own. But our independence predates, our heritage predates our independence. It encompasses our culture, our natural resources, our historical sites, our monuments, our buildings. My wife and I have recently moved into one such heritage building, styled the official residence of the Prime Minister. We determined not to live there until and unless it was renovated and restored, not only for human habitation, but as a heritage building. This elegant wooden building had seen hard times due to neglect, and I think First Lady Sandra Granger may perhaps endorse the status also of State House, where the President and the First Lady moved in. They have been a little more courageous than my wife and I. They moved in and then get it fixed. It took 1 full year to do essential repairs in accordance with the specifications by the National Trust. Today, along Main Street, the residence, still a work in progress, stands proud amongst our magnificent wooden buildings. And I would invite the Trust and visitors to this conference to visit this beautiful building. With independence, we dutifully salute our national flag, the golden arrowhead, and we sing with patriotic fervor and gusto our national anthem. We identify our freedom fighters with independence, and we do remember them. In similar vein, we must recognize the creators of architectural gems, such as the 1889 Georgetown City Hall, the St. George's Cathedral, the Victoria Law Courts, and other historical landmarks. We must protect and preserve them as our heritage. It is for this purpose that the National Trust of Guyana was established in 1972, and as Mrs. Nirvana Persaud recited to you, it was established to preserve our monuments, our sites, places and objects of historic interest and of national importance. The Trust has undertaken to document Guyana's heritage and has recorded some success. I have looked last night at your packed program and observed that it includes topics such as wooden historic preservation and economics of preservation. Our National Trust is dedicated to boosting our wooden heritage sector, but its labor would be circumscribed by the economics of doing so. In this regard, our government welcomes this conference, not only to share knowledge and expertise, but to effectively preserve our heritage resources and to source funding to restore the grace and beauty of our heritage edifices. Our government basks in the expectation that one day Georgetown would be counted among the heritage capitals of the world. It must be restored to its pristine beauty, building by building, block by block, and must lead the way in being transformed into a green and clean capital. As you know, the heritage sector in many developing countries faces many challenges, including absence of zoning, lack of documentation of heritage resources, and developers, modern developers, sees historic structures as objects to tear down. We must resist the easy temptation to tear down our heritage. We must restore our pride in who we are, what we have built, and showcase our achievements. We are happy to have others who believe in us and are willing to help. We highly appreciate World Monuments Fund for including our historic 1889 Georgetown City Hall under 2014 World Monuments Watch, which calls international attention to at-risk cultural heritage sites around the globe. This was the first time, as we were told, a site in Guyana was included on the watch to garner local and international attention and support to help preserve this remarkable architectural building. Beyond our national borders, we consider the world as our home. We have a proud heritage, and the watch list of the World Monuments Fund reflects our common interest in promoting a global heritage sector and to preserve the architectural genius of humanity. It was this in mind that Guyana had gifted 1 million acres of pristine forests as a conservation site, named Iwokrama. Guyana will, as announced by the President, release another 1 million acres, perhaps more, to supplement this green lungs, to leave a new heritage to all humanity. While we must renovate our ancient buildings, we must also open new parks, green parks and playfields for our children, for our elderly to breathe fresh air and to live out their lives in leisure. We must extend personality to our lanes and roadways. We must move away from dependence on fossil fuel and provide our roads, buildings, and offices with green alternative energy. This is the new heritage that we must bequeath to the future generations. But for now, we must devote attention to our heritage stock from the past. Our government therefore supports all initiatives taken by this conference to build awareness amongst Guyanese people and corporate citizens to join in protecting and preserving our monuments and heritage generally, and to support the thrust by central government and municipalities to safeguard our heritage buildings, sites, and monuments, and to promote national pride in what we own in the same way that we have stirred so much pride over things Guyanese during this golden jubilee of our independence year. We hope to revitalize the scope of work to be undertaken by the National Trust and to ensure that it reaches out to the newly elected towns and councils to take responsibility in their respective areas for heritage resources. We commend the Trust for winning an International Green Apple Award, as was announced, for the Build Environment and Architectural Heritage 2016 from the Green Organization in the UK. And this, as we were told, is coming 3 years after we won the Caribbean Heritage Protection Award. I wish all participants a fruitful exchange and renewed conviction that your combined efforts would help save the treasures of our heritage, whether in the form of wooden buildings, monuments, and sites, and at the same time to make our heritage stock into a unique, sustainable tourism sector. Personally, for me, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be with all of you who have a dedicated mission to protect and preserve mankind's dearest possession, our heritage, our life, our planet. With these words, it is a great honor and pleasure to declare this conference open. Thank you.